Hi, y'all. My name is Samantha Foss. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the Director of Development and Communications at Texas Homeless Network. We also have Eric Samuels, who is our CEO and president. Oh, and I just showed a calculator. Eric, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, Eric Samuels, he, him, his, and I'm the president and CEO of Texas Homeless Network.
Cool. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I'm the first half of the presentation, and then Eric will take over the second. One thing I have realized with virtual life is that I have a very hard time with being presenting and also being seen virtually. It has never been that case in person, but I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera now because it helps me be a better presenter for y'all. And so if that, okay, you still see my screen though, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. It just was very quiet because regardless. Anyways, so today we're here for Getting Involved 101, the Texas Legislature. We are going to go over kind of the basics of what the Texas Legislature is, how it's composed, and then also what happens during it. So how do bills happen? When does it become a law? It's 101, really setting the groundwork for you to understand the process of being involved within the legislative session. Then Eric will take over and he'll go over how to stay informed, ways to get involved, and then we'll have hopefully some time for Q&A. So the first step is just understanding how the structure of the Texas legislature is. So we have two branches, which is the Texas House of Representatives and the Texas Senate. We meet for 140 years every 2 years between January and May to pass laws and conduct business. Bills must be passed in both of our chambers, so they have to pass in the House of Reps and the Texas Senate, and then signed by the governor, all within that session. So you have 140 days to get a lot done, which means it's very hard to pass laws. It's 5 months to do a lot of things, and so on average, 20% of bills that are filed become laws. And so we're really talking about a small percentage of the bills that pass through that are able to make it to the end of the process. In our House of Representatives right now, we have 86 Republicans and 64 Democrats for a total of 150 members. These members serve 2-year terms, and currently the Speaker of the House, so the head of the House of Representatives, is called the presiding officer, and that's Dade Phelan. On the Senate side, we have 19 Republicans and 12 Democrats, resulting in 31 members. Members serve alternative 4-year terms, and so that means not all of the members are up for election at the same time. The lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate, and that is Dan Patrick. And what we have next is our big three. So our big three are our governor, our House Speaker of the House, and then also our lieutenant governor. And so I'm going to go over kind of what each of those do so that you all have a better idea of where the powers reside in our legislature. So currently, as most people know, our governor is Greg Abbott, and he is elected every, well, not him in particular, but the governor is elected every 4 years. What he does during the legislative session is he sets that agenda. So at the beginning of every session, he has what's called the State of the State, where he sets what he considers emergency items in the agenda, which are is a really big power, because what that means is he has full discretion. He chooses what takes priority during the legislative session. And with that State of the State, with the agenda for the first 60 days of session, which is quite a long time in the session for the length of time the session is, for that first 60 days, only the things that are emergency items are allowed to move. So this is a huge power and advantage for him to move what he decides is most important as the issues, because that legislature is against a race of time. Since there are so many steps to getting the bill passed, these items essentially that he sets on his emergency items have the best chance to get passed. Another unique thing that our governor has is a line item veto. Not every governor has this. And essentially what it means is that once the bill hits his desk, so after it gets passed in the Senate and in the House or vice versa, it ends up on his desk where he can do a multitude of things we'll go over. One of those things is to do this line item veto, which can change the process of how a bill works or how a law functions, what that bill or law actually means. And that's a pretty big deal because he has the power to completely change a bill at the last step. If he does something that some folks consider really worrisome, it would have to go back to the House and Senate and pass to overpower his veto. They'd need 3/4 of each chamber to agree. So again, that's really hard to do. And so that's just a really big power he has. He also has the power to call a special session, which we all know he has. And that essentially is, again, a way for him to push his agenda of creating emergency items for a special session. And that can be things like our infrastructure, that can be things, there's a variety of things that can be on his agenda. The next is the Speaker of the House. He is the presiding officer of the House. And this is the person in the House of Representatives who sets the agenda, he settles disputes, and he sets kind of the tone and the pace of the House. His role is unique as compared to the other two because he is actually elected by his peers. So he's elected by other representatives at the beginning of the session, versus the other two, for the governor and the lieutenant governor, are elected statewide by the people. He's also the only person who's only in his role for one session. So it's up every single time versus the other two have 4-year terms. The other thing that the speaker and the lieutenant governor have are the ability to suspend rules or change rules based on what they consider important. And so this is another really important power to know. What happens when a bill goes through the process of our legislature is it's a really set in stone process. And hundreds of bills are going through this process at any given time, so mistakes happen. So during a hearing in the House, any of the representatives can call what's called a point of order, which is essentially them saying that something went wrong with the bill in which it didn't follow those rules through the process. Lots of reasons people do this. It can be to try to kill the bill, which is what happens a lot of the times, because if you call a point of order and you say, hey, this isn't right, and the Speaker of the House agrees, then it has to start all over again. So it goes back to the beginning of the process, which makes it very hard for it to get through the process all over again to get passed. What he can do, or what the lieutenant governor can do, is decide that even though a rule was broken, it's okay. For whatever reason, they decide it's okay. That would be them suspending the rules. And sometimes they can also change the rules. He also determines the makeup of committees, which is also really important because committee chairs determine what bills go to committee, and which ones stall and never get heard in committee or never get voted out of committee. So him being able to elect the committee chairs is a really strong power, and is really important to seeing what bills can go through the process. And one of the things for both of these folks, for the Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor, is that both of them know what legislators they're choosing and what priorities those people have. So they usually pick people that align with their priorities and will push through bills that they feel align with them. So they're kind of creating folks that work along their agenda. For the lieutenant governor, we have Dan Patrick. He's the presiding officer of the Senate, and he runs on that same 4-year term as the governor. He has similar powers as to the speaker, as we just talked about. One of the main characteristics of the Senate at this point is that it's really common, more common in the Senate than in the House, for them to suspend and change rules. In that is one of the challenges of things will often pass in the House, but have challenges in the Senate, or vice versa, because there's different tones of how these chambers function. So what we often see is that with the lieutenant governor as it is, that one of the big powers he has is, and this can be true for any of them, is when they call to a point of order and they say, hey, I want to suspend the rules or change the rules of the Senate, like the lieutenant governor did, what they'll do is they'll wait for enough people to be on the floor who are aligned with agreeing with them. And then once they do that, all of the senators will then vote and say, yeah, I agree, we should suspend that rule. And then the lieutenant governor gets his way, essentially. He also has the power to make up committees, which again, like the Speaker of the House, is super important. The important dates to know for the legislative session is some that have already passed, but the first day of the legislative session was January 10th. After that, there's the inauguration of the governor. We also have Texas Homeless Network's Homelessness Awareness Day that will be happening in just a couple of weeks that Eric will talk about later. We have the deadline to file bills, and then also the last day of the legislative session. And so these are really important to kind of keep in mind, particularly around the deadline to file bills, because if you're interested in talking with a representative or a senator about getting a bill filed, you're going to want to make sure it happens essentially this month. It's also one of the things that we talked about before, of that a lot of the times in Texas Homeless Network and Eric have been working to talk to their representatives and senators way before March. So usually bills start getting formulated and created starting in November and getting filed. And so it can happen well before the legislature actually kicks off. There's some other key deadlines. So the deadline for bill filing is March 12th. This is estimated, I based this actually off of an Equality Texas webinar that they talked about. Essentially, for a bill to make it through all of the processes it needs to go through, i.e. getting passed in the House and the Senate, the estimated committee passage saying that it gets voted out of committee is April 29th. That doesn't have to be the case, but it makes it the most likely that anything happens with the bill. So usually if April 29th rolls around and a bill you're really worried about hasn't moved in committee at all, you probably don't have to worry about it anymore. The last day for a bill to pass out of the House is May 13th. The last day for a bill to pass out of the Senate is May 25th. And then the last day of the legislative session is May 31st. And that's just a fun, I will always put Neil Patrick Harris anywhere I can. So that's how I feel about deadlines overall. So we're gonna look at this kind of overwhelming graphic about how a bill becomes the law. One of the first things I wanna point out is the arrows here, because essentially what the arrows mean, you can ignore them after this, is that after it goes through the House process, it has to go up and start all over again at the intro. So it goes, finishes here, goes up, and starts again at the Senate. If the bill originates in the Senate, it'll go all the way through and then go to the House. A lot of the times, a really good bill or a really bad bill, a bill likely to make it through the process, a representative will find a senator who also wants to author a sister bill. So sometimes there'll be the same bill happening in both chambers just to try to see which one can make it through faster. Again, we talked about it, but the bill is introduced between November and March. We're going to go through the House. It's kind of the same thing as the Senate until it gets to the floor. Then the bill is referred to a House committee by the Speaker, and is possibly amended, dies, or is voted out. So when that bill is referred to a committee, there is a bunch of different committees for a bunch of different topics. So the committee will be supposedly, or what is well intentioned to be, the folks that have the best knowledge around the topic. So whether it's agriculture or state affairs or what have you, it'll be representatives or senators for Senate committees that have the best knowledge around it. Those committees, again, are structured by the Speaker or the Lieutenant Governor. When it is referred to a committee, that House committee has a chair that can decide when and if it's heard or voted on. It can have amendments here, and through that process, they can either have it sit stagnant so they don't vote on it, they kill it so they say absolutely not, or it's voted out as a yes and then it goes to the floor. If the bill passes and is voted out, it goes to the Calendars Committee to get scheduled for the floor debate. The Calendars Committee is a super powerful one, and a lot of times you'll hear calls for action around a Calendars Committee because that's the place that bills get stuck often. And so sometimes when we're really excited about a bill, we'll send alerts, or other organizations will send alerts and say, call the Calendars Committee, tell them to get that bill heard on the floor, or they'll push for you to contact the Calendar Committee to have the opposite happen and say, this bill doesn't need to go any further. So as an advocate, that's a really good spot for you to get involved, and you'll hear advocacy actions asking for you to do that. Once it's brought to the floor, so the Calendars Committee puts it on the schedule and it's brought to the House floor, they're going to have a spot where they have two different debates. And I think I go over this, but I'm not 100% sure. But they have two times that it's heard within the House. The first time's really in both chambers. The first time's really just to hear it, to get some amendments in. And then after that, there's a 24-hour period where in between, it's, in theory, folks sitting and thinking about the bill, wanting to make sure it aligns with their goals of their constituents. And then after the 24 hours, it's back up on the floor for a final vote. That final vote, if it passes out by a majority vote, that bill is then sent to the Senate, and then it starts the Senate process. So
Sam, are you there? Looks like
Maybe we can
yeah.
give Sam a minute or two to see if they come back on, but if they don't, I can pick up from here. I think One of the things to point out, though, is this is a pretty complicated process. The way the bill becomes a law, but the way you participate doesn't have to be that complicated.
Well,
I see it's just on me, Craig. Is it supposed to be just on me?
Sam looks like they crashed, so they'll probably be back in just a second.
Okay, we'll just talk while we wait. For those of you who are on, and I just want you to know, and I'm not going to go over this on my slides, it doesn't no matter what you've done in terms of advocacy, what kind of experience you have, nothing like that. You can always participate, and we can help you to participate at any level you want, and we encourage you to do that. It can be intimidating. I mean, I've been doing this now for what, 8-10 years, still intimidating to me. So we'll try to make it not intimidating to you if you wish to participate. And I don't think we go over this either. I'll just keep talking until Sam comes back. If you're worried, if you work for a nonprofit and you're worried that you're violating any of the lobbying rules or any rules regarding advocacy that apply to you because you're a 501c3, I would encourage you to look up Boulder Advocacy. In fact, I'll drop a link in the chat here pretty soon, so you can look to see that. I would say 99% of the nonprofits that we work with would not have any worries whatsoever about definitely advocating and educating policymakers on why a bill could be good or bad, but also lobbying. You are able to lobby even if you are a nonprofit. It's just, it can't be the majority of what you do. And if you're anything like our agency, it's definitely not the majority of what you do. It's probably a very small percentage. Looks like Sam's coming back, so
No, this is me. Sam lost internet, so they're gonna call in. So I will be driving for a minute.
okay, we'll let them call in, but Sam's almost done with their part, so. Well, while we're doing that, I'll get that Boulder Advocacy link.
Okay, y'all can probably hear me. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so of course, as 2023 goes, I lost internet, so I'm from my phone right now. So I'm going to continue where I was. I only have 2 more slides and then Eric takes over. So hopefully that'll make it easier for y'all. So where I should have left off is that that bill getting passed in the House and then going to the Senate. Once it is in the Senate, it has the same committee. The thing is that 3/5 of senators must agree to send it to the Senate floor for debate, which is a little bit different. So because the Senate is smaller, that's just the way it's always been set up. And so it can be a little bit harder also to get any bill in the Senate to get to the floor. Once it's brought to the floor, that's again where it can go through the first round of voting where they do amendments. They have floor debates on both chambers where folks talk it out and decide what would make the bill worth passing. And then if it's passed by a majority vote, the bill is then sent back to the House. If it's already gone through the House, then it goes to the governor. So if it passes in both chambers, I'm sorry, I said both houses, it's both chambers, it goes to the governor for approval or veto. If the governor does not veto, it then becomes law. So when it ends up, you can go to the next slide.
I was about to say, you're driving blind, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. Well, when I moved it to the next one for mine, and I was like, wait, it didn't do anything. That's why. So once it goes to the governor's desk, as we talked about, he has 3 options, or the governor in general has 3 options of what to do. He can sign it as is, he can sign it with his line item vetoes, or he can veto the entire thing. And he can allow it to pass without signature. That's kind of a funky one. It definitely happens a lot, and it can be for a variety of reasons. It can be literally time, and it can also be he's not happy about it, so he doesn't want to sign it and essentially endorse it, but he's not unhappy enough or thinks it's in his best interest to not veto it. So he may allow it to pass without a signature, and that can be, again, for a variety of reasons. If the governor vetoes it, the bill goes back to the chamber in which it originated. So it'll either go back to the Senate or the House. They can try all over again, but likely when he vetoes it, he essentially kills that bill. There is a 2/3 majority on both sides that requires 2/3 of the majority to agree to override the veto, which again is a very hard thing to do in politics in America at this time. So we have this quick video that if you click on the actual link, Craig, up top. It's just a quick pump up video, essentially. Can't hear it. Can anyone hear it?
It's coming out of my speakers, so I'm not sure.
Okay. It's honestly, no, they can't hear it. And it's not that important. It's just like when we post it, it's a very good video to kind of overall, I think it's a 12-minute video and I clipped it down to a minute. But it's a good talk about how to be grounded and becoming an advocate that thinks about your historical context in an issue. You think about your role within your community. You think about who inspires you and what you want your community to look like, and then you go do it. So it's just a really good talk from this person about kind of the pillars of becoming an advocate within your community. So it's more for feelings than it is for content. And then we will pass it off to Eric to do the second half. Before we do that, I just want to make sure there's no burning questions about the process of what the legislature is before we get into kind of how to get involved as a constituent or stakeholder.
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay. Then we can go move forward. Y'all can definitely drop them as we go, and we can address them at the end if we need to. But Eric, you can go ahead and get started on this part.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I am going to drop that Boulder advocacy link I talked to you about while Sam was reconnecting. It's right here. We don't have a slide for it, but if you have any worries that you're violating any 501c3 rules, don't worry about it. You're not. And if you are worried so much that you're still, even with that, you may not be inspired or feel like you can go advocate, tell us what you want us to advocate for, and we can do it for you, time willing. And I want you to ask your questions on chat or unmute yourself and ask questions. If you have anything for me, please let me know, because I'll write it down and have it in my little notepad here that I'm using when I go up to the Capitol. So I can talk to your representative or senator about what your issues are. So don't hesitate to reach out and during this meeting or even after and tell us what you need. Okay, so what I'm supposed to do is go through and show you how you can track legislation, how you can weigh in on proposed legislation, and just the different ways to participate in this legislative session that has just started. So we're early on and you'll have plenty of opportunities before the end to participate if you wish. So Craig, I'm going to try to click on these links. We'll see if they work. Hopefully they do.
Request control.
I have control.
Request it and I'll give it to you.
Okay. I'm going remote, so hopefully I have control. Okay, so One thing that you can do, and sorry, I'll be looking over here occasionally for my notes, is you can look at the legislative priorities that we have outlined on our page, which if you go to that link and scroll down about halfway, you'll see those priorities. Those will be changing throughout the session. I just learned of a few things today that I need to add to that page, and Sam and I will try to update that as often as we can. Please, bear with us, and because it does take a little time to update that. So you can always go there, and then later on, I'll give you another way that you can stay on top of things through us, through a listserv, but I'll get to that later. Another way you can do it is you can go directly to the Texas Legislative online page. So I'm going to click on here. All right, it's working. This is amazing. And I don't know how you see it, but the text is pretty small, so I'm putting on my glasses.
Here, hold on, I'll zoom in for you.
No, it's fine. Well, actually, maybe for them.
Actually, you can just control and scroll. You should be able to zoom in. All right, give me just a second.
Do it up here.
There you go.
Okay, hopefully you all can see it better. Or maybe it was just me. Okay, when you get to this page, if you've ever looked at this page in the past, when you first get to it, it might show a different number here. And what these are referring to the session. So we're in the 88th session, and the R stands for regular. Last session, you had the regular session, and then you had 3 special sessions. So that's why it says 1, 2, 3 after 87. But make sure you're in the 88R session. That way, that'll give you the most up-to-date data. Now, if you went to our page and you saw the bill number, so for example, if you saw HB 2035, then you can just do that, type it in, and just hit enter, and it'll go to it. And then what you can do is you can look at the short explanation, but then you can go to text, and you can click on one of the versions of the bill that's easiest for you to view, and you can view it and read it. The other tabs are just ways to follow what's going on. Actions will be, it's been filed. The next thing that'll happen, if it's assigned to a committee, it'll say which committee, which in this case will probably be State Affairs. And then this will grow. Under actions, it will grow throughout the session. And then as this moves along, authors will be added. Right now, there's just one author. Well, I know there are joint authors already. Wow, things move fast. You'll see more authors added as things go along. But then also, if you want to see where the bill is, you can follow this. Sometimes, like Sam talked about, they'll get all the way through the House and maybe even the Senate, but they will not become law. So it has to be green. Basically, everything has to be green through all of these boxes before it becomes law. So I'm going to go back. Okay. Yeah, so you can look it up that way. I'm going to show you how to search too. Matter of fact, I'm just going to go back to this, and we'll go back to the lookup. Okay. Another thing you can do, and I know I'm going through all this pretty fast, so I know we're recording this, hopefully that helps, but you could also get in touch with one of us later and we can help you. But you can sign up for an account. So click login, and I think this will remember me, but if you haven't logged in, you can sign up as a new user. It's real easy. It just asks you for your username, your email, and your password, and then a security question, just like anything else.
Eric, what's the benefits of having a login here?
I'm getting ready to show you. So if you have a login, what you can do is, okay, you can search for bills at any time, whether you log in or not. And what I would suggest, if you don't have the bill number, click search, go to text search, and then I just always use with any of the words. So you can just type in simply homeless and hit enter. And what you can do here is just look through all the bills that are filed that are in regard to homelessness. If you want to, at that time, you can, if you log in, you can save the search. And you can enter in a keyword like homeless or eviction or whatever, so that whenever a bill comes up that has that word, you'll be emailed that bill as it's been filed. So that's the advantage of having the username. There's voucher. Sorry, the remote, I gotta work with the delay. So now, whenever anything comes out with voucher, I'll get an email. It typically comes in the morning after the bill's been filed. Before I move on, any questions, because I went through some of that pretty fast.
I'm not seeing anything yet.
Okay. Let me go back to the. Okay, and I showed you how you can follow the bill through this process. One of the other things you should know is that, let's go to bill search again. And we're going to type in, let's type in. So if you see HB and then a number, HB stands for House Bill. And then the number is just, it's related to when it was filed. SB is Senate bill. Sometimes what you'll see, and I think Sam mentioned this, is there'll be a bill filed in the House and you'll see it and say it's HB 2035. And then a day or two later, you'll see, say, like SB 1617. And it'll be the exact same language. So it'll be a companion bill. So sometimes when we list it on our priorities, we'll say this is HB 2035 and SB 1617. So because they're basically the same bill, there's in the House and Senate. So they do that so that they can pass through the House and Senate quicker, and then they can be combined into one bill and then be passed overall and then sent to the governor. It makes it faster. Okay, let me go back here. Okay, I'm making sure I'm not missing anything on this page. Now, one of the things that you may hear from people is that while you can use the Texas Legislative Online page to track stuff, there are paid versions of this. My suggestion would be, if you're not doing this day in and day out, and you don't need to know committee hearing notes or things like that right when they drop, use the free version. I use it. I don't pay for a version just because it'll get me something in a few minutes faster. It's not worth it to me. So I would just say use the free version. It's really good, actually. By the way, a lot better than a lot of other states. Okay. Okay, so some common questions. So how do you contact your representative or senator? Well, one thing you can do is when you hear from us or a bill comes out that you want to weigh in on, is that you can go to either the House website or the Senate website. I'll click on the House website first. When you click on the House website, they look a little different, by the way. I'll click on both of them, but go up to members. And if you know who your member is, you can identify them by their picture. If you don't know who your member is, you can search, I think, yeah, there you go, find your rep. And you can go in there and it'll take you to another site. And you type in your address and it'll tell you, let's see, I'll type in our old work address. You can type in the city too, but you normally don't have to. And so you'll see along the left, you'll see your US congressperson, your US representative. And then the next two boxes down, that's your state rep and your state senator. The rest are your other representatives, but those are the ones you want to look at for a Texas legislative work. So you can do that with the Senate as well. And when you click on it and you click on their, let me go to senators, go to members. If you click on their, I should have done this before with the members, but if you go to their specific page, you can find information on them. Sometimes they just have the direct office number or just the office number that will ring to whoever's in charge of handling incoming calls. Other times you'll see and it doesn't look like he has it. Sometimes they'll have listed another website that you can see a little bit more detailed information on the senator or representative. In addition to that, we have some contact information that I can't put on our website, but I would make available to you if you needed to get in touch with somebody, or if you wanted to get in touch with somebody through us, we could also help facilitate that. One of the things we have that I can't put on our website is that it's a directory, a phone directory that you have to pay for. And so I think I would probably get slapped on the hand if I put it on our website. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to walk through this, but if you want to find out some more detailed information about the legislative process, you can click here. I'll just open it up so you can see what it looks like. Honestly, this it's not that many pages, but if you can read through all this and get to know this, you're probably going to know more about the process than I will. But it's a good way to go through everything. I thought Sam did a really good job of going through the steps of how a bill becomes law, and I think that's a really good guide for you right now. But again, you can go to that. Craig, they can get the links to these, right? I guess they can after.
Yeah, I'm going to do a follow-up email and send out all the materials that we cover, plus all the links.
Okay, so you can do some of that yourself. And again, don't ever hesitate to ask us questions. So next slide, and I can do that, can't I? Okay, oh, I went too far. Okay, so this is what I was going to say I could get to later. We have a THN Advocates Base Camp group. Let's see if I can show. I'm going to just show you what it looks like. Actually, let me go to something from last session. Oh, this is a good one. Well, not a good one, actually, but you'll see what I'm talking about. So last session, the camping ban passed. And before it passed, we had, oh, that's not the right one. Here, hold on. Let me try to get this. If this doesn't work this time, I'll subject you on to this. No, it's not going to work. Sorry. Anyway, we have a Basecamp group. So it's basically, it's like a listserv that we have specifically for, we have a lot of the listservs, but this one's for THN advocates. So if you want to be a part of that group, you can sign up for a THN membership and we'll add you to that group. And even though we do update our website with our legislative priorities, that's not as frequent as what we update with our TH and Advocates Basecamp group. I wish I could show it to you, but if there's a bill that's about to be heard, I'll put an announcement out, and anyone who's on that group will see the announcement. They'll see the details of the bill that's about to be heard. I'll put talking points in there that you can use if you want to call your representative or senator, whoever's involved. And then I can identify ways that you can participate in educating your policymaker serving your area. Okay. If you want to just go on, if say you're following a bill or even a committee that, so for example, on the House side, Urban Affairs is a committee that will hear a lot of bills that we would be interested in as advocates for people at risk or experiencing homelessness. So you might want to just go and check out the page that has the committee information, and it's opening, I think. There we go. So under House or Senate, you can go down to committees. So I'll go down to, and then you can, there's a lot of committees. Some of the ones that are really important, Sam talked about calendars. It's weird that that's important, but it is, because that's the committee that decides when we hear certain bills. And we can go in there and weigh in with them on whether we want a bill to be heard or we don't want a bill to be heard. County affairs is really important what we do, but then urban affairs is one that's always important. And you might see one of your members here. If you are a constituent of any of these members, it would be really important if you weigh in on some of the issues with them, because they're going to have a lot of influence about what bills get out of this committee. So whenever I send out, if you were a part of that Basecamp group, when I send out information about a bill, I'll list the members and links to the members so you can get information from them or on them, so you can weigh in. But also what you can do is you can look at committee meetings. And I know that there's one coming up for urban affairs. So go to meetings for date, or just upcoming meetings will show you all of them. Well, it says no meetings have been scheduled. There is one that's scheduled, but it's not on here yet. I'll go to Senate. So if you go to upcoming meetings, okay, here we go. So with this one, we have a really big hearing coming up on February 14th, Valentine's Day. The Senate Finance Committee is going to be hearing about appropriation request from different, yes, thanks, Sam, for different state spending. And under this committee, under this hearing, we're going to have, oh, I thought, okay, it's not, I'm sorry. Under the House bill, under the House Senate Committee on that day, they're going to be hearing about the bills that TDHCA or the spending TDHCA will be putting forward. So you can track it by committee meeting. You know what? I know why they don't have it up yet. They just announced membership to the House committees yesterday, so that's probably why they don't have it up yet. But we'll alert you to those meetings, but you can keep an eye out when those meetings are going to occur by that, going to those sites. After those committees are held and a vote has taken place, you can go to that, the TLO where you search for the bill. You can go to that part of the website and you can see how they voted, or you can also go to finding the vote information here. It'll be, well, you'd have to click on what the bill is, it looks like. I don't think I've ever used this to do this, but, oh, here it is, down on the bottom, I'm sorry. House votes by date, or Senate votes by date. So if you know when the hearing was, you can just go to that date on the calendar and see how someone voted. There's not going to be anything on here right now, so I can't really show you an example. All right, let's go to the next one. Wait, there's a comment. Oh yeah. Okay, so during the bill filing, I mean, it's always best if you can to start working with the legislative office before the session even starts. But it doesn't matter, you can work with them even after it starts. It's better if you are working on a particular bill to get with that office really before the end of the year prior to the legislative session. And this is something that I've been doing since, I guess, about last October. So you can do that. You can work with us to do that, whatever you need to do. After that bill filing, and the bill filing is still occurring, there should be the legislative budget board. They get the information for a bill and they put the bill together. They give a bill number and then they file it. And we should have all of the bills filed probably, I would say maybe by the end of next week, but it can happen all the way through, well, I think right in early March. But once the bill's filed, it'll be assigned to a committee. And then you can start weighing in on the bill. So you could simply reach out to the chair of the committee, and it doesn't matter if you're a constituent of that chair or not. You can reach out to actually that chair or any member of that committee and do things like ask for that bill not to be heard. You can weigh in on that bill by calling the office or emailing the office. You can write op-eds. You can do anything you can to draw attention to that bill and why it should or should not be heard or passed ultimately. I always think it's good if you can. If emails are good, if you can call the office, I think that's good too. If you can get up to the Capitol, one of the things you can do if you don't want to testify, if it's a House committee meeting or a Senate committee meeting, you can go up to the Capitol and they have these little kiosks that you can go in there and you can pick which committee hearing you're wanting to weigh in on. And you can say, I want to testify, I want to give oral testimony, or I want to give written testimony, or both. Or you don't even have to do that. Or you can say, I'm for this bill or I'm against this bill. And that a lot of times, most of the time now actually, you can do that electronically through a kiosk. Sometimes, like yesterday, I went to the Capitol and testified in the Senate Finance Committee hearing. They have the actual cards. So you fill out the cards and you drop the card with the clerk. So you can be, with that card, you can say, I'm going to testify or not. I'm going to give written testimony or not, which is what I did. Or you can just say I'm for the bill or not and give it to the clerk and you can leave. Unfortunately, you have to be at the Capitol to do that. I checked and they no longer allowing us to do that from outside of the Capitol. Last session, they allowed that because of COVID for a while, but that's not an option anymore. So I'm sorry that you can't do that. Once it gets through committees, if it's being considered on the floor, you can again contact your legislator and ask them to hold it or move it ahead. The Senate actually now needs 19 senators or 3/5 of the Senate to move it off the intent calendar and onto the floor for a vote. Last session, we had an odd number of senators, and that's why we were able to go down to 18. The Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is the one who decides that, so it could go down to 18 again, but I think it'll be 19 this session. After the committee and you contacting your legislator about their hearing on the floor, if something's about to be scheduled for a hearing, you can go to the calendars committee and ask them to hold it. And if you're up there, you can actually go and drop a slip. I think it's a blue slip. I don't know why, but I think it is. And you can drop and say why you don't want it to be heard. So you have that option as well. There's a specific office you can do that. If you want to do that, I would say, get with me or someone who has been there we can show, we can walk through that maze of offices to get there. Again, then when it gets to the floor, you can ask your legislators how to vote. It's always good to share your story, talk about why it's important on social media, talk about why it's important to the staff, and ask others to participate. That's something that's really important. Okay, public input opportunities. I talked about a lot of that. Again, most of it has to be in person. This House witness registration, I think, is, I'm gonna click on it, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, you have to be in person. There's a kiosk, an example of a kiosk where you would fill it out. Yeah, I was talking to someone earlier today, and unfortunately you can't do it if you're not at the Capitol, which really limits our abilities to weigh in publicly on certain bills. But you can call the offices and let the staff, your representative or senator know, what you're thinking. Drop a card, must be at the Capitol Wi-Fi. You can walk in the front door, get on your laptop or your phone, and if you have the link to, virtually drop a card, you can do it right when you walk in the front door for that committee hearing on one certain bill, and walk out, and you will have your input recorded. So written testimony, the great thing about written testimony, if you sign up the kiosk and you say, I'm for this or I'm against this, then you can say, I want to drop off written testimony. If you do that, then go through the rest of the form and hit submit, then if you show up before the meeting starts, or even if there's a little break in the meeting, you can just walk up to the clerk, drop off your written testimony, and then you can be gone. The thing is, if you're going to do that, make sure that you follow the instructions of that committee. For example, yesterday at the Senate Finance Committee hearing, they wanted 40 copies of my testimony, 12 font, and they have all these rules. So follow those rules before you go up there, and they won't make copies for you. Trust me. I've been talking for a while. Do we have any questions?
Nothing's come in so far.
Okay. There's nothing you can ask that will not be that's out of bounds. So I'll just say that before I finish out. More ways to get involved. You can join the THN's Advocate Committee. That site or that page I can't show you. You can join as a member by clicking there. You will have the ability to do that once you get this sent to you after this meeting. I bet we could put it into the chat as well. You can donate to us to help us with our advocacy. Some of the money that is donated for advocacy goes to helping people with lived experience get up and get up to the Capitol and advocate on behalf of themselves, tell their stories. We are also using the funding to put on events like Homelessness Awareness Day, which is coming up February 22nd. You can share your story online, schedule a meeting with your legislators. If you are coming to Austin and you want to spend 2 hours at the Capitol talking to who represents you, don't hesitate to reach out to us and see if we can come with you. I've done it before. I've had people come from Dallas, and I met them at the Capitol parking garage, which is free for an hour, and it's very inexpensive after that. But I would meet them, and then we would just walk around the Capitol together, talking to their representative and their senator, or whoever else. Sam, good question. I'm going to answer that in a second. Amplify your posts and advocacy efforts on social media, and then of course stay up to date with our policy page. Okay, let's get to your question, Sam Whitehead. Does THN have a policy recommendations as related to TDHCA session you mentioned? Oh, so you're talking about, I think, there's going to be a House Finance Committee hearing and a Senate Finance Committee hearing that is related to funding that would go through TDHCA. So yes, we do have positions on this. So we have our legislative priorities, and among those, and you won't see it on our page yet because I haven't told Sam about it yet, so sorry, Sam. But one of the things that we're going to be asking for is an increase in funding for the homeless housing and services program funding that goes through TDHCA. So we'll add that to our talking points. Just drop something. We're also going to ask for money. We're calling it's a bill now. HB 1917. You could look it up. It is what we're calling the Texas Tenant Readiness Program. What it does is it provides funding to voucher holders, so we can incentivize landlords to, well, basically to lease to them. If they have moving costs, we can pay for those. If they have back utility payments, we can pay for those types of expenses. So that'll be another thing we have. We're asking TDHCA, well, we're asking the legislature to allocate funding through TDHCA to expand our Texas Homeless Data Sharing Network program that we run right now, so that we can better serve people and serve them in real time. And then there's one more that may go through TDHCA and may go through another department, a Texas Education Agency, or the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. And that's homeless prevention funding that would go to community college students in the 5 systems with 40,000 students or more. There's unfortunately been an increase in community college students falling into homelessness and having to exit their classes so they can make rent, and most of them never return to school. So we want to prevent that from happening. So that could be funding that we also ask TDHCA for. We have other requests through HHSC. We're trying to double the supportive housing rental assistance program funding so that our LMHAs have, well, double the funding than what they have now to help their clients with rental assistance. So yeah, our talking points, we'll try to point out when hearings are coming up, what department they'll be through and what approach we're taking with that. Good question, really good question. And that's a really good way to set the expectations for the session. So if you go to the Senate Finance Committee, there are a lot of members on that. And a lot of those members serve on other committees. So if they see something in front of them that says, this is what we're trying to do, this is how it helps Texans, this is how it saves Texans money, then they'll have that knowledge from them from the beginning of session all the way through, and they can take it back to the other committees that they're serving on. So I think that is a good way to kind of set our expectations and hopefully, set us up on a good path. So any other questions before I move on? Because I think I'm about to give up control here. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide and then give Craig back the control.
And once Craig goes back to having control, we can move to the next slide. Because what we really want to do is hold space for conversation and questions to come in, but we also want to be able to have y'all fill out a form for us that is just an interest form that tells us what you want to get involved in. And so if you go ahead,
Sam, do you want to share your screen? You want me to?
it doesn't matter either way, because really the last slide is just a preview of that form.
Oh, okay.
Probably be better than looking at me though, right?
No. You can look at all of us. So that form that I dropped in the chat is what we want you to fill out before the end of this webinar. That kind of goes over a little bit about what you're interested in doing if there's skills or information that you want to give us that could help strengthen our presence at the Capitol, or ways that you just want to get involved with THN overall. So if you submit that, that would be great. The other thing I wanted to point out as we kind of wrap up is when Eric and I talk about the Advocates Committee or becoming a part of the Advocates Base Camp, one of the things we want to be really mindful of is while we absolutely need funding to continue advocacy, there are not that many grants at all that give us the opportunity to fund our advocacy work, and Eric spends a lot of time at the Capitol. The thing that we want to be sure of is that we're not gatekeeping that information. So if you have a challenge with not being able to donate, so our membership, our individual membership, the lowest amount is $25, and you can't swing that, email Eric or myself, and we will absolutely get you into those platforms no matter what, because we don't want there to be a barrier to access of information. It's just our way to try to encourage a little bit of funding to keep us going as we do our work. So other than that, as folks fill it out, if you have any questions or things you want to talk to us about as we wrap up, you can drop them in the chat. If you have things you want to talk about, not publicly on a webinar that's being recorded, you can always email myself or Eric. Eric's the leader on our advocacy, so I would say you can email both of us and see who gets to it first, but he is really your main point of contact.
I also add that we've been talking about the Texas legislative session, but we advocate on the federal level too, or even the local level. So, you know, we'll try to help out in whatever way we can, no matter what the level.
Yeah, and there's definitely opportunities to get involved with us on the federal level if you're interested in that. So you can always put that in the form as well.
All right. I'm looking for questions. I'm not seeing anything yet. Again, once this video is processed, I will send this to all the registrants with all the materials, links, and pertinent information that we've gone over today in case you need some follow-up so you can share with your networks. Sam,
Great
Sam.
question, Sam. I'll answer that. Yeah. Sam, I'm going to try to do it as soon as I can, but it really requires me to get it to our Sam, and then enough time for Sam to put it up. So realistically, probably early next week, to be honest. I'd love to get it done by tomorrow and promise that, but that I would be promising too much.
Yeah, and I'm out Monday through Wednesday. So
Well, actually, if we can, well, Sam and I can talk. We'll try to. We'll update as soon as we can, but by Wednesday or by Thursday.
Yeah. We try to update it once a week. It just depends on when bills are coming in and such.
Would we have the Basecamp project updated before the website then?
Yeah.
Yes, we will. But just for the sake of this, I'm gonna drop in 2 bills in the chat. You can look at it. I'm gonna get really wonky here, but so this one, HB 235 that I talked about, it is one that I would say it is not positive. Let's just say that. What it does is it takes the ability of municipalities, it takes their ability to regulate evictions away. So if, like in San Marcos, for example, if someone's about to be evicted, they have to go through the eviction process and everything. And then the city does get involved. And if they can, they'll try to help that person. This would take that away from the city, that ability away. And then the other bill. So needless to say, I will be encouraging legislators to not vote for that. Or a better way to say it, to be perfectly safe, even though you're fine saying what I just said, you could just say, this is what, if this bill were passed, this is what it would do to people in my community, which is it would potentially increase homelessness.
Well, and there's no way, I just want to also clarify for you as an individual, not
Oh
as
yeah,
a nonprofit employee representative, you are absolutely allowed to strictly say that you do not want a bill to get passed. What Eric meant by that for safely is it's considered lobbying when you tell a representative or a senator what to do with a bill. So what we do as a roundabout is talk about the consequences of a bill that essentially like read between the lines as saying that we don't want them to vote for it. But I just want to be clear that if you are not representing your agency going to the Capitol, so even myself, if I go to the Capitol, even though I work for THN, if I'm not representing THN, I can give them an earful and it doesn't impact THN. And honestly, even still, most people don't have enough people lobbying in their agency to even worry about getting in trouble. There's just for 501c3s a limit to the amount of lobbying you can do. That's like very in the weeds. I just want to make sure people know that as an individual, you can say whatever you want to say.
I'm sorry, that's exactly right. And I think Sam might have been out when I was talking about some of this, but yes, Sam's also right that a nonprofit can do some lobbying as long as it doesn't go over the boundary. It won't for you, I can guarantee it. But if you want to be very careful, you could do the education. HB 1917, that's the Texas Tenant Readiness Bill. That's the one that provides funding to voucher holders to get them into units easier. It kind of operates, if you know, emergency housing, the emergency housing voucher program that a lot of communities have right now, it kind of operates like that, but without the voucher money attached to it.
Well, we got any more questions, folks? You have 14 minutes back to your day. All right.
Oh,
We
wait,
have
Sam
one
has
more.
one more. Yeah.
Yep.
Let me go to that. I think, is that the one by compost? Let's see.
So Sam asked Eric if he could speak to House Bill 913 for anybody that didn't see that one.
Let me make sure I know that. I know oh yeah, okay. All right. How can I say this? That is a bill. Sometimes there are bills filed by legislators who are well-intentioned. They just may not know all the intricacies of what would happen with that bill. I've been working with that office about this. Just for those of you who are wondering, this bill would establish a statewide homeless data system. I think this is the one that, let me make sure. Yeah, this is the one that would more or less, I'm sorry, I'll make sure I'm saying this right. Okay, yeah. So if a lot of you probably use HMIS, Homeless Management Information System. So the one San Antonio uses is different than the one Austin uses and different than Dallas. What this is saying is that we would all use the same system. And we did that back in the late 90s. We ain't going back. That's not happening. So, and no bill, even if it was passed, could make that happen. So sometimes there are bills filed that well-intended, but ultimately would not affect any change. So I hope that answers your question. but it is confusing when you see it. Oh, is it this one? Okay, I'm sorry. Sam, we'll update that. I think I had it up there because I was trying to work with the staff to change the language so it mirrored our Texas Homeless Data Sharing Network expansion.
Well, and sometimes so when I guess we should probably also try to find a way to make it clear. Sometimes we're showing what we're tracking and not saying it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. We'll have it listed as that bill as one that we're following and that we would suggest you following. But it doesn't mean just because it's on the website, it's one that we're a huge fan of. And so we should probably find a way to denote that more.
And to be clear, coordinating the data systems is a great thing, which is what we want to do. We just want to set it up to where our homeless response systems, our COCs, are the ones that decide how we do that. We don't want it to be dictated to our communities how we do that, because we feel like our communities know how to do it best.
And especially from a client's point of view, once you've entered HMIS and you have that release of information, if you were to tell them that the legislators are now going to have access to your information, it could scare off a ton of clients from being willing to enter into the HMIS system by itself.
Yeah, it's more for homeless crisis response system folks to be able to have the best interest of their clients in mind, because they're the closest to the data, not state folks.
Mm-hmm.
But Sam, that's a good question here. So what we were hoping, I could go into all the details of what we were hoping. I have notes, but if you look at the bill, like if you pull up what I had, I don't know if I can show. I'll just point out one little thing. I know we're getting really in the weeds here, y'all. And I did misspeak earlier. Okay, that representative has two bills. One bill calls for one HMIS. It's not this one. This one does call for a statewide homeless data sharing network, essentially. But it doesn't do it in the way that I think would benefit us. So just one of the things that I asked them to change is this. Texas Homeless Network operates the current data sharing network, and we collaborate with 9 of the 11 COCs on this. If we took this language, at face value, that would mean a state agency like HHSC or TDHCA would be the coordinating body for this instead of that, which we don't want as an agency, but after talking to our COC leads, we know they don't want that as an agency, or they don't want those as COC leads either. That's just one thing. There's some other things on there, but
I think the other piece too is we're not necessarily looking at what would benefit Texas Homeless Network. We're looking at what is best for that client's data and the homeless crisis response system. So the reason we started the homeless data sharing network, and Eric really pushed that in a way that I think makes a big difference, is because it gives responsive, efficient care to folks experiencing homelessness across our state. And so we just happened to be the lead. We are the lead for Texas on homelessness. We already do all of the coordination between COCs, so it was a natural fit for us. So I just kind of want to also clarify, it's not like we're trying to get anything out of it other than making sure that people experiencing homelessness get the most responsive, rapid services they can to either get emergency or long-term support. And we think, and we have been working on this for many years, we have a really good way of we're already doing it. So it seems like it would be going backward if a bill like that were to go into place.
Yeah, I think that's good to point out. Thank you. If you have other questions, we have a little bit more time. Those are really good questions, and thank you for clarifying that, Sam. I misspoke earlier, Sam, the other Sam. So thanks for pressing us on that. And Sam, I'd be willing to send you my notes that I sent that office if you would like to see them. Just drop your email in there and I'll do it.
Another curveball to that, if the state maintained HMIS, that still leaves victims of domestic violence out in a separate database as well. So you'd have to consider
Well,
how that would affect those clients as well.
It also offers, well, it's, yeah, right. You can't put victims of domestic violence in there. So, yeah. That might put them in harm's way. That's why you can't do that. And it's illegal, by the way. So that's another reason. Hopefully that answered your question about how I could affect them. Yeah. Yes, victims of domestic violence are considered homeless as soon as they flee their abuser. But sharing data, do I agree with that? Of course, I agree with that. But we can't collect data or share data because that violates that violates the protections under the domestic violence protection laws. And the Office of the Governor's funding mechanism disallows it as well. And there's another, I forgot the other one.
And so Sam, just so you have a little bit of background, victims are kept in a comparable database, which means it's the same shell as HMIS, but all the information inside of that shell is de-identifiable. There's no names, there's nothing that you could use to identify a client to protect their safety.
Any other questions? These are all good questions. Y'all reach out to us whenever you need after this, and we'll see what we can get you. Like Sam said, it's probably a good idea to email both them and me. Sam, I can tell you that I'm notoriously late on emails, so I apologize in advance.
Well, all right. If there are no more questions, I will turn us down for the day and I will work on getting this video processed and sending out all these materials. Again, if you got anything, let us know. And everybody have a wonderful afternoon.
thanks, y'all.
Thank you.